Good morning, students. Today we are going to read about the simple electric cells in the topic of electrolysis in the subject of chemistry O levels. So concentrate yourself. This is one of the important lecture. A simple cell is a device which converts chemical energy into electrical energy. A simple cell consists of two electrodes, two different metals. So electrodes will be of two different metals and an electrolyte solution, acid or salt solution. Of the two metals, the more reactive electropositive metal undergoes oxidation. So these are the characteristics of the more reactive metal out of the two. So, of the two metals, the more reactive metal, electropositive metal, undergoes oxidation, loses electrons more readily, becomes the anode, becomes the negative terminal. The cell voltage depends on the position of the two metals in the reactivity series. The further apart the two metals, the bigger the voltage produced. For example, if we use copper and zinc metals, the voltage produced will be 1.10 volt. But if we use copper and aluminium metals, because they are further apart, voltage will be more, that is 2 volt. And if we use copper and magnesium metals, they are more further apart. Voltage produced will be 2.72 volt. So, the cell voltage depends on the position of the two metals in the reactivity series. The further apart the two metals, the bigger the voltage produced. Now we are going to read an example. Figure shows the setup of a simple cell. The metal used as an electrode are copper and zinc metals. Here is a voltmeter and the electrolyte is dilute sulfuric acid. Zinc is more reactive than the copper. So zinc loses electrons more readily than copper. Oxidation occurs at the zinc electrode and zinc becomes the anode. Each zinc atom loses 2 electrons and is oxidized to zinc ions. Anode reaction will be Zn forms Zn2 plus 2 electrons will be discharged. Electrons flow through the external wire to the copper metal. Whereas the second metal, that is copper, becomes the cathode. Reduction occurs at the copper electrode. Hydrogen ions from the acid solution receives the electrons. Each hydrogen ion receives 1 electron and is reduced to hydrogen. Bubbles of the hydrogen gas are formed at the copper surface. And the cathode reaction will be 2H plus 2 electrons will form H2 gas. So the overall reaction will be Zn plus 2H plus forms zinc ion, that is Zn2 plus, and hydrogen gas. This reaction converts chemical energy to electrical energy. Another example is here. Figure below shows the setup of another simple cell using two different metals and two different electrolyte solutions. So two different metals used in this setup is zinc and copper. And two different electrolyte solutions used are aqueous zinc sulfate and aqueous copper sulfate. Here is a salt bridge and here is voltmeter. Zinc is more electropositive than copper. Zinc becomes the anode, negative terminal. Each zinc atom loses 2 electrons and is oxidized to zinc ion. Anode reaction will be Zn forms Zn2 plus 2 electrons. Zinc dissolves into the electrolyte solution. Electrons flow through the external circuit to copper electrode. Whereas the other metal, that is copper, becomes the cathode, positive terminal. Each copper ion from the electrolyte solution receives 2 electrons and is reduced to a copper atom. And the cathode reaction will be Cu plus 2 electrons form Cu. A pink copper solid is deposited on the cathode. Concentration of the copper ions decreases. Blue solution becomes colorless because of this. And the overall reaction will be Zn plus Cu plus forms zinc ion and copper metal. Cells or batteries represent convenient portable energy sources for use in the watches, radios, cameras, torches, toys, and portable computers, etc. So these are some uses of the simple cells. Figure below shows a Daniell cell. In Daniell cell, this is aqueous copper sulfate solution. This is porous pot. This is copper and zinc metals. And this is aqueous zinc sulfate solution. What energy change occurs in this device? The answer is chemical energy is changed into electrical energy. Second part is, what is the function of the porous pot? Here is the porous pot. The porous pot is used to separate the 2 electrolyte solutions and to allow exchange of the ions between the 2 electrolyte solutions. C part is, write ionic equations to represent reactions taking place at the anode and the cathode. So the anode reaction will be Zn forms zinc ion, that is Zn2 plus 2 electrons. And cathode reaction will be Cu plus 2 electrons forms copper. And the last part is, indicate the directions of the electron flow and current flow from this device. Electrons flow from zinc electrode to copper electrode via the external circuit. Current flows from the copper electrode to the zinc electrode via the external circuit. Another question is here. A strip of the copper and the strip of the silver were dipped into aqueous silver nitrate. As shown in the figure, a current was found to flow from the copper electrode to the silver electrode. Here is the setup. Aqueous silver nitrate is the electrolyte. Silver and copper electrodes are there. Briefly explain the way current flow from the copper electrode to silver electrode. So, the copper is more electropositive than silver because of its higher position in the reactivity series. Each copper atom loses 2 electrons and is oxidized to copper ions. And the reaction is, copper forms Cu2 plus 2 electrons. The electrons flow to the silver electrode. Each silver ion gains one electron and is reduced to a silver atom. And the reaction is Ag plus electron forms Ag. This flow of the electrons produces an electric current which is registered by the voltmeter. So this is the way how the current flow from the copper electrode to the silver electrode. The second part is, will the voltmeter register any reading if the aqueous silver nitrate solution is replaced with sugar solution? The answer will be, the voltmeter will not register any reading. The sugar solution contains sugar and water molecules. No free ions are present to conduct electricity. So students, this was the lecture of simple electric cells in the topic of electrolysis in the subject of chemistry O levels. So read this lecture again very carefully and make your notes. Thank you so much, students.